Good morning from Hong Kong. My name is Alice Mong, Executive Director of Asia Society Hong Kong Center, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you to our panel today, Innovate for Recovery, the Role of Disruptive Entrepreneur in the Post-Virus World. I'm so delighted that Asia Society Hong Kong, in collaboration with Asia Society Northern California, can present this wonderful live webinar for all of you. And we're really delighted to have this distinguished panel. I'm going to leave the introduction of our panelists to our moderator, Alan Rosling, in a little bit. And I wanted to thank all of you to join us this morning and this afternoon or this evening from California and also our Asia Society Global Network. The coronavirus pandemic has brought unprecedented disruption to the global economy. Public health system, industrial and manufacturing activities, global supply chains are witnessing disruption unseen before. It has impacted almost everyone, every demographic, whether you're a kid missing school, adults working from home, and elderly who are very much impacted by this coronavirus. However, technology has been at the forefront of this fight against this pandemic. And I have to admit, about 3 or 4 months ago, I probably never heard of Zoom. So now I'm a Zoomer every day. So Asia Society Hong Kong, through our technology and innovation series, is exploring the latest trends, insights, and projections on how the next phase of innovation and disruptive technology will shape the Asia Pacific region and beyond. Since 2017, we have been hosting an annual India and China Connect series, bringing together technology innovator, entrepreneurs, investors into the discussion. and since our collaboration with Alan. So delighted Alan can be moderating this session today. Our distinguished panel today will discuss some of the questions about the global technology sector and post-virus recovery as they unravel the current challenges and opportunities. And I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice, and welcome to everybody to this podcast, particularly our friends in California. I hope your weather is nicer than here in Hong Kong, where it's pouring with rain and is incredibly humid. All of us are fed up with this virus. And while the virus will no doubt be a panelist, along with my distinguished friends here, what we want to do is look forward, to think about the recovery and winning the recovery. And to particularly focus on how entrepreneurs can address some of the needs coming out of the virus and take advantage of the opportunities that the virus has given us. It may well be that some of the trends that we were seeing before the virus are just cemented and accelerated by the virus. It may well be that many businesses are simply wiped out. It may be that consumer behavior, which has changed as a result of the virus, remains changed forever. It's fairly clear, I think, that digitization, as Alice was just saying, will be accelerated. We hope possibly that the concern for the environment and sustainability will also be advanced and accelerated. Typically, entrepreneurs are faster in spotting opportunity than large businesses, who tend to be more bureaucratic and more risk-averse and slower in making decisions. And they see change, technological change or market change, as an opportunity to disrupt. And I think that's what we wish to focus on. The panel we have assembled here in Hong Kong at the H Society, but also remotely, is a very powerful one and a very diverse one. Let me very quickly introduce them to you. In the middle, we have Peggy Choi. Peggy is the founder and the CEO of Lynk, which is a platform that powers the knowledge economy by bringing together, I think, more than 600,000 experts in all sorts of areas. Peggy had an earlier career in banking and private equity investment. Remotely from China, we have Dr. Miles Wen, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Fano Labs, which is an AI company that focuses on automatic speech recognition, natural language processing, and big data technologies. Miles is very closely associated still with HKU, and I guess, Miles, that's where you span out from, where he still teaches as a visiting prof. And critically, perhaps for us, Miles raised his capital from Horizon Ventures, which is the VC vehicle of Li Ka-shing. So Miles clearly is going to have all the answers and the money to address our issues. Sitting immediately to my left, we have Roopam Sharma. Roopam is the inventor of a new technology called ManoView, which is the world's first intelligent wearable visual assistant. No doubt Roopam will tell us a little more about it. But basically, it allows the visually impaired to read text, printed text, by deploying a wearable glove, essentially a finger device, and then transmitting to your earpiece. Roopam is a resident here in Hong Kong at the moment, but actually is from India and lives in Haryana. Last but certainly not least, we have Duncan Chiu, who is the co-founder and managing director of Radiant Venture Capital. And he is one of Hong Kong's most respected and experienced tech VCs, with experience in Hong Kong, obviously, but also China, India, and across the region. So we are going to have a panel discussion here in Hong Kong and bringing Miles in remotely for about 30 minutes. But then we'll turn to Q&A. The Q&A will be via Slido. So please use the link on the invitation to get into Slido, or go to slido.com, slido.com, and use the code that you've been given, which is #16121, to ask your question. And then it will appear on this very fine device in front of me, and I can put it to the panel. So without further ado, if we can turn to the panel. And our first question, and I'd like Peggy perhaps to lead on this, is around the consumer. And all of us did Marketing 101, so the consumer is where we start. So, Peggy, in your view, how does consumer need get affected and changed by the virus? And coming out of the lockdown and the immediate impact of coronavirus, how do you expect consumer behavior to be different in the recovery, which obviously then entrepreneurs can link into?
Yeah, it's I think very interesting question from the perspective of a consumer ourselves, like how we consume information currently. I think that's the area where you see, a pretty urgent need that's becoming quite obvious. What I mean by that is, because we are more, we can't. There's a lot less physical movement, right? And there's a lot more distances between people, and we can't really, be at a place, to like look at things firsthand that we're supposed to understand or know, whether it's businesses or consumers. So let's say if I were going to want to buy something, I can't possibly now, perhaps like not the first thing that I do is go to, like, say if I want to buy like a jacket, like maybe the first choice actually online instead of going there in person. For businesses, if I'm making an investment, it's a lot more difficult for me to look at things on the ground firsthand. I have to actually go through intermediaries and actually get people on the ground to tell me what's going on. And because of all these trends, I think people are becoming a little bit more aware of what we are consuming digitally. Are these information that we're kind of like reading and consuming online credible? And a lot more skepticism that I think we are generally sensing from the customers that we work with, the business customers that we work with, like things that they look at, that they try to evaluate. It's quite obvious that, hey, they're doing a lot more work to get insights, to get intelligence, to prove or disprove what they would normally be taking as maybe a strict fact.
So you're saying that there's a potentially a trust impact,
yes,
as well as a behavioral impact.
That's right.
A psychological impact.
That's right. I think that comes down to also much more, I think, awareness that the type of information that we see through various channels, is that real or fake? Is it misinformation? Is it disinformation? I think skepticism comes from awareness, right? So that I think is an interesting, change that we're seeing in consumer.
In the markets that have begun to open up, China, now beginning in Europe, any observations, and maybe, I don't know if you've polled your 630,000 experts on Lynk. What is that telling us about what might happen in other markets as they open up?
Yeah. So we tend to see more, investment activities or business activities, and a lot of it is cross-border as a global business, and we tend to work with, say, corporate strategies, and private equity funds and whatnot. And the trends these days primarily, say, online education, healthcare. These are very popular sectors.
Right.
Yeah.
Miles, you're sitting in China. I just wondered if you have a view. You're obviously observing what's happening in the mainland market as they're ahead of the curve going into this crisis. They're ahead of the curve coming out. How different is it from what you perhaps expected, what you saw in Hong Kong before you went back to China? Any observations and learnings?
Yeah, in China, I think it's actually less impacted. The only thing you see outside changing is actually shopping malls are empty, restaurants are empty, mostly closed. And there's actually a lot of offline entertainment places are mostly just still shutting down. But then actually, I think what's changing right now, it's actually not changing, but it's more getting more popular. It's actually the online activities. It's everything becoming online, people gathering online, everybody just raise a toast from over Zoom or some other software. So that's what's happening in China. But I think China is particularly very well adapted to this kind of pandemic, because even prior to that, the majority of even our daily activities are happening online. It's just that right now it's getting even more, for wider aspects of life.
So already China was very digital even before the crisis in terms of payment systems, shopping habits, entertainment. So you're saying that trend is even more exaggerated and accelerated.
Exactly.
Okay. guys, the two of you, any observations? Perhaps Roopam, you're a guest here in Hong Kong. So what surprised you with the observation of Hong Kong consumers?
I'll first start with, give you a brief about how the geopolitical situation changed after COVID-19, because this black swan, it sort of marked the end of, Pax Americana. Like whenever there was a crisis or something like this happened in the past, we always had Uncle Sam leading the way. But this didn't quite happen this time. What we really saw was the rise of Asia. Like if you see, like, what I get to hear about is the rise of the Asian century now. So I think I'll enlighten our audience first of all. Like when people in the West, when they see Asia, they see it from a Chinese perfect perspective. Like they only see China authoritarian government, but it's not like that. Asia is 5 billion people. 40 percent of the world's economy is Asian, and most of the people live in democracies. So the audience, consumers, are quite different. If you talk about our subcontinent, the Asian subcontinent, 1.8 billion people, and that's a lot of data points. So when you see the consumer behavior, and this is not another commodity like oil. This is data. You can have an upselling in this.
So Miles was saying that China is heading back to normal quite quickly and recovering quite fast. From what obviously you speak to family and friends back home in India. What are they telling you as to the mood in India? The consumer, we're still focused on the consumer mood in India, and the potential changes in consumer behavior and expectations and needs in India and neighboring South Asian countries.
See, a lot of people are going online now, especially with the COVID coming in. Yeah, so a lot of people are okay. A lot of people are coming in online now, and so there is a new audience that is bringing in, for example, online education. Most of the schools, universities are closed in India, and people are just switching to newer platforms, and that is bringing in another domain revenue stream and new
that may
opportunities.
Be true of the middle class, but what about the ordinary 250 million day laborers? Are they also online? Are they seeking entertainment services, shopping online, or is it just people like us, so to speak?
So that is where we go to work. That is where we come into action, because what we at Eyeluminati are doing. So, for example, ManoView is an ultra low cost personal and portable AI, and over the last 5 years, we've been making sure we need to hit the bottom billion of the socio-economic pyramid so that these audiences get digital.
So we can see a democratization of
yes,
digitization.
Exactly. True.
Duncan, do you want to come in with a perspective on the consumer?
Yeah, I think in the consumer market, actually, we see great bounce back, in starting from China last month, and Hong Kong is actually now, I wouldn't say back to normal, but it's a lot better. But I mean, we take a quite negative view. I think after this bounce back, still, the general economy is still going to be hitting the general spending behavior. So consumer-wise, I think we might see further slowdown in the second half. And spending behavior, what you mentioned, spending behavior, actually this time, a lot of people would say that after the COVID-19, everything will be virtual, like Zoom, people never going to use Zoom, and e-learning, telecare, a lot of these are actually being tested. But our view is actually it's not going to be 100% virtual after that. Well, people will still get back to physical contact and consumption. And actually, what we call this is a good stress test. We are testing out a lot of technology, whether it can be applied to education, to medical, to other things. But then there's still many things to fix. And whether that is actually totally up to our expectation, let's say for e-schools, right, e-class, I think it's only 60%, 50% of what they deliver in class.
Learn by testing.
So we learn by testing. We have to improve. Teachers and people that use it, nurse, they have to improve. Citizen will get used to, what are actually good for them and what is not. So I think it's a good stress test. A lot of startups, they actually get to demonstrate their product, which they never get an opportunity before.
Okay, so that's a very good segue to my second question then on the technologies that may win or lose. Miles, can I turn to you as a technologist? So from your perspective, what technologies do you expect to be winners, and which might be losers coming out of this crisis? I assume you're going to say that AI, robotics, big data, the areas that you yourself, of course, are involved in. But just talk a little bit about the impact on those businesses, but then their uses in much wider applications across the economy.
Right. In terms of technology that will go away, I don't see any technologies that will go away, but I do see there's a bigger change in the way we use the technologies, because at the end of the day, as a technologist, we build technologies, but we also need to figure out how to use them. And we do see a major spike in terms of a major surge in terms of demands for technology for applications, primarily that helps this kind of a social distancing as well as the remote working. So lots of in our cases, what we do most of the time, we do speech recognition, which we figure out who the speaker is and what do you say and what do you mean, those kind of things. So we do lots of those we're starting to see lots of new demands in the market where people ask us, every day our meetings are happening online. Can we use our technologies to turn our meetings into a memos, right? Automatically. So those are the things that all of a sudden become very popular. That wasn't the case before this, because prior to that, everybody say we just meet up. But now all of a sudden we don't meet up, so we have to go through a Zoom or Teams or whatever software you're gonna have. And then all of a sudden the data become digitalized. And then when you have so much data digitalized, you may want, even for this event, we're doing recording, and I'm pretty sure at some point somebody might want to put a caption on it. But these kind of things can be automated right now because we have technology to do it.
If I may just intervene and interrupt, I'm sorry.
Yep.
If what you're describing happens more widely in many applications, what are the consequences on the economy? Because you're saying, first of all, people don't travel because they've gone digital. They're using this type of technology, so that has job implications for airline pilots, Uber drivers, and hotel staff. But you're also saying that jobs can be automated and robotized. So things like speech recognition, transcription, pattern recognition, etc., has huge implications for professional services, clerical jobs, admin jobs across the economy. So is this good for recovery, or is this just good for VC investors like Duncan?
No, I think this is good for recovery because, I'm kind of, from science point of view, at the end of the day, we all need to adapt. Technology, we need to adapt. People, we need to adapt. Society needs to adapt. The thing is, the fact is we are traveling a lot less. Actually, lots of airliners have grounded the majority of their flights, bad for their business. But then at the end of the day, we still have to survive. And then we still need to figure out ways to move things forward. And even for our case, prior to this pandemic, we were doing some other applications, but now all of a sudden those things have become irrelevant. Lots of applications have become irrelevant, and we're seeing new applications. So we adapt to it. And then that creating better new jobs. Some old jobs might be gone, but we're creating new jobs at the end of the day, and we're creating a new economy out of it. So this is actually more of an optimistic view towards what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's really about this adaptability that really matters for every business.
Can I turn to the panel here in Hong Kong? Who'd like to comment on technologies and what you expect to see in terms of tech?
Yeah, and I think adding on what Miles is saying, I think the lens that we view this as a short term and long term, right? Long term, I think is definitely positive. It pushes us to be more productive, right? Find and leverage technologies in ways that's much more accelerated than before, right? There's a kind of one of these ongoing joke, which is that digital transformation is not really enabled by the CTO, but it's actually by COVID, right? And it's very true in many ways. But short term, right? We didn't and don't and haven't had the time to upskill and reskill people, and it's very sad to see the amount of jobs lost. And I think though there might be new businesses, platforms that could come up to enable more flexible work. We see some big news around health of businesses of certain gig economy platforms. But at the same time, I think there might be a new crop that could come up as a result.
Of course, history tells us that new technologies do produce wealth and do produce in aggregate more jobs, but there are always losers. The issue here, perhaps, is the speed. So if we have the sort of thing that Miles is talking about of digitization of jobs, robotization of jobs, automatic systems, the economy does not have the normal time to adapt in a crisis. We'll lose a lot of people before the recovery happens. Do you want to comment from an Indian point of view and a South Asian point of view, indeed, and your own point of view? I was just worried about, for example, Bangladesh. You think of 10 million people who are stitching clothes, and if somebody was to come up with robotized factories, nearshored perhaps to address the supply chain issue and risk, it had huge implications for societies as well as individuals. Anyway, so maybe take that question or the more broader thing on technology.
I think speaking of technology and the future, so there are like these two camps that exist. One is utopian, one is dystopian. I'm in the utopian camp. So I think I've always seen technology as an enabler. Like I think the same conversation was going on when Steve and Bill started their companies in the 70s. And I think we are having the same conversations right now. And I think there has been a boost in the number of jobs that have come up because of technology. And if you see, like, I work in AI, my team and I, we have a focus on AI. And I think in the 80s, when we started out, there were like these two mainstreams which were going on. One was rule based, and the second was neural network based. And now, when you see the neural network based AI wave hitting in, like we've already seen, like, the internet AI, the very first wave that hit, I think it created tremendous number of jobs. It did take a few jobs away, but I think a lot of opportunities arose because of that. The same thing sort of happened with the second wave, that's like the financial business AI. I think the third one that we really focus on, perception AI, that's going to create like a tremendous opportunity. I think Miles works in the same
Tell us about perception AI. Is this augmented reality, or is this what do you mean by perception?
Sure. So it is mostly, using sensors, augmenting sensors. It could be speech recognition. It could be visual recognition. So these are like the two basic, broad applications that exist. I think when you're seeing, augmented reality coming in, you see Apple doing great work. You see Microsoft, all the big corporations doing good work in this, and it's already we are seeing consumer products and services coming mainstream. And so this is still an emerging field. This is still being adapted by people, but I think when we started out back in 2015, it didn't really quite exist. But I think the future by 2030,
the development.
Like it's
Duncan, this must be absolute manna for heaven for a VC technologist to see the speed of change. Which sectors in particular are you getting excited about?
I think like Mao said, I think data related AI is actually moving way ahead with this help. Actually, I think for us, I think it's definitely necessary because we invest into tech, right? So I think the society move forward with tech, and I think one thing Mao's bring out adapt. You wouldn't expect people to adapt certain new behavior, but actually, when the data is there, when the technology is there, people just get used to it. My mom never video called me. I mean, before the COVID-19. And she plays mahjong again every day at home, right? After the 3 months lockup. So, even at 80 years old, she learned how to, make use of her smartphone. So, I mean, I think it's the way forward. And we have a good test out, like what I mentioned, of what data can bring to us. That a lot of people, they normally wouldn't make use of technology. They have to, with this pandemic. But next, there's still a lot we have to do. Otherwise, we will only be moving one step ahead and then two step back. Like governance, how to use data, right? How do you transport data? And even how to destroy data, So there are a lot of things for us to discuss. Now we only have like things like GDPR that, you penalize people for misuse of it. But actually, we are not talking about a globalized management of data and AI, and that is necessary.
Beyond digital, any sectors which take your eye? I don't know whether your
Well,
fund does anything other than
definitely.
digital.
I think medical side,
Okay.
biotech, general, smart healthcare related is huge. I think from this part of the region, aging is definitely one problem for China as well. But we're not actually in pharma. Surgical related, but I think that is another thing that we'll see.
But if you took pharma, do you think that the crisis, which is forcing people to take different and speedier processes for approval of vaccines and setting up hospitals and so on, will that be permanent, or do you think governments and regulators and big tech, big pharma will go back to their more comfortable ways after the crisis passes?
Actually, I think that leads to. I think it will continue. One, second, that leads to to my answer to my later question, actually, on the general market behavior. Actually, what we view is the market is actually not just because of the pandemic, but like U.S. China friction, that kind of thing, is actually we're going from globalization to regionalization. So that will affect and impact a lot of the companies' business model and what they're working on, and the VCs investment consideration.
You're saying that in terms of regionalization because of the politics, the kind of nationalism,
let's
or
say for
because of the resiliency required in supply chains?
let's
Because
say for
digital, of course, is entirely global. So-
Yeah, but I think politics is one thing. So let's say, for example, we were talking about a vaccine, right? Originally, I think for the COVID-19, in the past, we might end up with 1 or 2 vaccine at most. But you can see now India is working on your solution. Japan is working on the vaccine. UK is working on one, and US yesterday saying they're buying something from Sanofi. But Hong Kong is using a different version, and China definitely, they're mixing a boost of Chinese medicine.
But let me just push you on. A vaccine is we're all the same as human beings. So if the Oxford system or the Sanofi trial or whatever it is, so they come up with a vaccine, why should it be regional? Presumably, I mean, the Oxford thing has already signed a deal with the Poonawallas to produce it in the Serum Institute in India.
Yeah.
So a global supply chain can easily be set up.
Well, I think we see a bit in the mask and a lot of the PPE, the equipment used in hospital has been, being sort of affected by some political ground of different countries. So we assume, in medical area, some of the less vaccine, which are sort of sensitive, or some people will think of it as a national security issue, and company related to data, AI, we see the same thing. So, well, in some way, we have to revisit our investment, consideration every 3 months as a VC. I think most VC do, right? But now, actually, we're anticipating what is going to come forward is a regionalization in certain particular sector that, China will buy their own data-related technology, by their own medical-related technology or vaccines and stuff.
Can I test this with Miles? Miles, you heard Duncan arguing that one of the impacts potentially long-term is a breakdown of globalization, or reversal, a move towards either nationalism or regionalism. When data and AI is essentially borderless, do you see that happening, or do you think that the very fact that we can now get online and buy something from California or from Beijing means that it's breaking down national boundaries?
Let me. I sort of agree with Duncan. But one thing I want to correct for you, Alan, is actually data is not borderless. That's number one. If you say some data are borderless, it's only because the data are too unimportant. The important data always have to have a border. And I can tell you that for a lot of cases we do, we have businesses in Thailand, in Taiwan, and some other places. In many places where if the data you have work on are a little bit of sensitivity, depending on how you define it, there probably will be a law in the region that says whatever data generated from my country stays in my country. So that's why even for the likes of Amazon or Microsoft, when they build the data centers, when they serve government or large enterprise customers, they will have to use their local data center. Like basically, in some cases, in Microsoft in Hong Kong, they have to use the data center in Hong Kong. And in some cases, they have been in data center in Singapore because some data just cannot leave the country. So there, even if data is digital, but there is a border. So I think this is something that's going to happen, especially over the past few years when people realize that the power of data. I mean, you can do so many things with data. And then when the data applications might be something related with the politics or national security or some regulatory restrictions, then there's actually this border, this virtual border for data.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And thank you for correcting me. Roopam, you're a real entrepreneur at heart. So tell us, how do entrepreneurs react? So we talked to the consumer, we talked about technology. So do entrepreneurs see this as a real opportunity, or frankly, they're just scrabbling to pay the bills and survive for the next couple of months?
I can share my perspective on this. I'm a very highly optimistic person. I think I'll give you a background about myself. I'm a first generation college student. My grandfather was a daily wage farm worker from rural Haryana. My father is a retired migrant worker, and I'm a first generation student, first generation entrepreneur. So I am certainly very highly optimistic to be sitting with one of the wisest people here. And certainly, like, had I not been optimistic, nothing would have even initiated. So I think I am seeing this event as an opportunity to be maybe like a neo renaissance. Like, we had a similar black plague back in the 15th century. And there was this huge humanism movement that came out of it. We saw, the work that.
But with a very long lag.
Yep.
It was 100 years really
True,
before it.
True. But I think Moore's law, like I'll go with the Moore's law here. Like this is the 21st century. Things are very rapid. So I think we are certainly going to be seeing, like in a very short span of time, rapid transformation or new, sectors come in, and sort of like a transhumanism movement that is certainly expected out of this. So I think.
Do you think the failure rate of entrepreneurs will increase? So
Absolutely.
with the speed of innovation also,
Yes.
the speed of failure will also be
Yes.
quicker.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I think the ones who are going to survive or come out are going to be very exceptional. I think the thing is going to be, who are these people going to be? Like this is we don't really know, because this black swan event, nobody saw this coming, right? The things that happen after this, it's pretty unpredictable. Like people are generally like, so everybody in the 2010s, 2015, like till everybody was thinking the next people are going to be Larry, Sergey, Mark, or these are the people who are going to be creating the next renaissance. But now with the black swan coming in, like with this event coming in, we saw the rise of Zoom. Eric Yuan, he came in. Who are the next people going to be? Is it going to be somebody coming in from the genetics, like somebody like Jamie Metzl, or AI, IoT, Neeraj Saini, any who are these people? Who are the next people? Like that is the question that I am keen to.
And do you think the
out.
appetite for risk and the degree of disruption that will then succeed will increase or decrease? So more conservative entrepreneurs are more likely to succeed, or more risk-taking and disruptive entrepreneurs are more likely to succeed in today's world?
I would say on the latter part, the more disruptive, the more risk-taking ones. I think they're the ones who really go out and change the world. I think it's history repeating itself. It started from the very beginning. This is how it's done. If you want to make some real big disruptive change, you've got to be very much risk-taking. I think this is the trend that I have seen. I think personally, I'll go on the second part. Yes.
So Miles, if I come to you, are you doubling down and increasing the speed of your build out, or are you bunkering down and making sure you survive so that you can win in the recovery?
No, I wouldn't give a very clear definition about bunkering down or going aggressive, but to me, it's more about, I would say in this kind of economic environment, I'll be more cautious and actually taking, when I look at risks, everything, first of all, probabilistically speaking, whatever you do, there's always a risk. It's just the magnitude of risks and also whether there are actually unknown factors affecting the risk. But right now, I think, especially in Fano's cases, when we see opportunities, we're reasonably believing that it's actually pretty good, that we pursue it, and we just spend money and just pursue it. But we're actually more. But when it comes to opportunities where are more risky, that we're not like risk opportunities that we're not sure and that will cost money, then we'll probably just either hold back a little bit or do some more study to figure out whether it's something good or not. So
okay,
I think
that's
more
financial. But in terms of technology, are you willing to take more of a risk on a project technologically as well as financially? You're saying financially probably you're dialing it down, but are you doing more way out type of pilots than you were before, or are you also being cautious on the technological risk?
No, it depends. Like for instance, right now we're very bullish for technology that actually helps people combat COVID-19, especially in this new ecosystem. All right, and we're very bullish in doing that. Right. But when it comes to random technological adventures, then we're more conservative right now because we don't really know what's going to happen. Because at the end of the day, when we do technology developments, we're several approaches. One approach is actually we start with the problem, a precise problem that reflecting what's happening out in the world, and that's where we make technology breakthroughs, and we are pretty bullish still on that front. But it's also another part of technology development where we are more experimental or research oriented, where we're just thinking about some problem that might happen 5 or 10 years later, that kind of things. We're we're getting actually more conservative towards that kind of research. So it's actually more. There's two sides of it.
Peggy, your perspective, and do you think entrepreneurs are genuinely going to contribute to the immediate recovery? Or do you think they're just falling by the wayside like flies, and it's going to be governments and larger companies that lead us through the first recovery? And then a view on risk. Are people going to take more risk and be more disruptive?
I think there's a general, I'm the optimist as well, because we are all like the entrepreneurs here, right? We've got to have that to do this, right? But at the same time, I think it depends also, right? Because it's like they had been, I think, a lot of easy money for the past couple of years, right? In a way, for startups, might have been pursuing certain businesses or business models or technologies that didn't have sustainable, healthy unit economics, right? In a way means that capital would have gone into basically just subsidize the growth of the business. So the growth of business is not a fundamental growth, but it's a, manufactured and engineered growth, right? In a way, by capital that was relatively easy. And going into this couple of years and this kind of new horizon, I think VC capital, it's a new game, I guess, in a way, demanding basically entrepreneurs to actually be a lot more robust in terms of how do you actually then realize the technology, the applications that, Miles and Roopam is talking about, is that it's not just the technology in itself, but how do we actually create a business around it that people can use it, that the business can scale and be sustainable in the long run.
So different business models see different types of entrepreneurs who are more grounded and more realistic, less salesmen.
Measured risk, I would say. You still need to be risk taking, right? But it's more measured risk. Yes, it's always risk reward, right? So it's just that I think we've got to have the perspective on.
Thank you.
Right.
Duncan, maybe you could comment on this, but also tell us from your point of view as a VC, how do the rest of us support entrepreneurs, increase their chance of success? How do VCs support the chance of their portfolio companies, but also new entrepreneurs they're looking at succeed? Governments, universities, how do we improve the chance of the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
I think that would take hours to actually answer the question. But I mean, actually, I think disruptive, we just mentioned, is a must for all founders, right? You especially in the tech area, you have to be disruptive. But sort of the environment of the overall investment scene will also impact what entrepreneur can do and cannot do, right? Because the abundance of funding previously, let's say in China, let's say for sharing bicycle business model, for us is actually there shouldn't be more than 3 players, but hundreds of players will fund, right? So whether they enhance the success probability of that business, I think the probability of that successing will still be the same, whether you have 100 players in the field or just 3 players in the field. So that actually the market, sometimes the funding will trust it, the process, but not the result. So now what happened is, I think in China, we see a squeeze of his VC capital starting actually in 2018. So it's been actually 2 years. We call a winter in the investment side. And Hong Kong actually, it's been a while, starting from the end of last year. The deals that we see now, actually, they're being they start talking last year, right? So we see still some deals happening in Hong Kong, but I think what we advise a lot of the companies that we invested or we visited or we talked to, that I think the next 6 months is still going to be a difficult time for most VC because funding will be scarce. And actually, so in terms of what you spend on technology, it has to be it impact the founders as well, because you cannot say I take a risky project like Mao said. I said I'm going to have clients 5 years later. You're not going to get investor at this moment. It's quite difficult unless it's really.
Are you spending more time than you were supporting your portfolio companies, or are you actually seeing this as a massive opportunity to finding new entrepreneurs?
It depends case by case. Like we mentioned, not everyone have a negative impact on that. Some company benefit. Logistics, learnings, and their company that benefits from it. That they might need more firepower to even expand. So not everyone's being affected. If I quote a survey we had at Cyberport in Science Park just now, in the last few months, that I think we interviewed more than 400 companies, maybe 60 to 70% having negative impact, and they are seeing cash being a problem ongoing in the next 6 months, but some benefit. So we will have to see case by case. But most company, we have to tell them they have to be more cash cautious. If you have a 6-month runway, try to extend it to 12 months. So that's our general advice to.
Okay, I'm conscious we promised to open it up, and we probably should. But on this last question of what can the rest of us do, any final comments from my other panelists about what government can do, the government in China perhaps, the government of India, the government of Hong Kong, to make sure that entrepreneurs contribute to the recovery? Any immediate thoughts? Miles, any thought on government support?
I can chip into that. Sorry, Miles, because we are also, Miles and me, we also just found a think tank, and we were in the news yesterday that actually we submit some suggestion to the Financial Secretary of Hong Kong.
And
so
what are the couple of key points?
I mean, the key point is mainly we lack of long-term capital in Hong Kong. So we have some angel investments. We have a lot of VCs, private money in Hong Kong. But long term, we don't have sovereign funds. So we're expecting government in this time, in China, I mean, government account for more than 60% of LP money into VC funds. So that is one thing that we urge the government can think at this moment, to bring in more professional managers, professional VC monies into Hong Kong. And we have many, smart inventors here, good founders here. But long-term money is actually one thing that we still need more professional teams.
Now, are you saying that 60% of LP money coming from the government of China, is that historical, or you're saying that's a result of the crisis?
I think that's according to 2019, the white paper of China VC PE market. So
Right.
The government money account for a big contribution to LP into funds.
Okay, so on, if you remember, everybody, you're giving us questions on Slido. There's a group of questions that have come in on Slido from our watchers out there around government response. So let's pick up this. One of them says, what has China been doing to help boost the startup economy? Another question is on Silicon Valley. How is Silicon Valley faring in the tech startup recovery? Would anyone like to take, anything geographical? So you made some comments about China and Hong Kong. Any comments on India or the US?
We work with a range of venture capital firms and PE firms, customers. They would be our customers. We didn't do like a official statistics or data gathering, but anecdotally, funds that have been actually saying 50 to 60% of their portfolio would be in a mode where they need to basically figure out what to do to survive. Could be between 1-2 months to 6 months, and I think that's a pretty scary thing for a lot of investors, especially those who have been very active the last 2-3 years. And those that have not had, like, say, multiple funds already, basically historically, might have been just in their fund 1 or fund 2. So I think that's a pretty consistent anecdotes that we're hearing. And at the same time, I think deals are happening, but it's really, I think a lot of it's like from the prior discussions that's kind of, maybe happened like 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, started, around that time, so that they're kind of finishing up and closing now.
But new conversations are more difficult.
Is a bit more, I think, feels like a live deal's not really, the volumes have come down for sure. But I think it's a bit of a waiting kind of pattern, because ultimately, like the PE dry powder, if you look at what's available out there, like, I think $2 trillion, a historical high. So private equity activity, VC included, will come back because of the fact that the supply is private capital at the end of the day, right? Venture capital is private capital. So that dry powder amount actually includes both categories, both early stage and late stage,
Observation, I've just gone through a funding round with a company on whose board I sit in Switzerland, which went amazingly swiftly. I was, Swiss and German investors just carried on, even though they couldn't meet. Very different from what I observe in the companies that I'm involved with in India or the US. Now, whether that's a one-off, I can't tell you, but it just seemed more relaxed in Switzerland, with people having the confidence to go ahead. Miles, can I try to bring you in? I don't know if you're in the market for raising money at the moment, but what do you observe around the ecosystem in terms of the confidence of the system to get back to normal in terms of fundraising, investment, exits as well, of course?
Yeah, I've been in close touch with many investors over the past few, actually the past or slightly over past half year. I think it really depends on the VC we're talking to. I mean, some investors are generally more optimistic, some are more conservative, and also depend on the portfolios of some investors. I mean, I know some investors are pretty big, and the majority of the portfolios are actually with offline kind of a physical entertainment, travel kind of things. And those VCs, because they're losing money, because their portfolios are actually having bad business, and they are becoming a lot more cautious. I mean, most of them, they actually is pulling out from funds, they're pulling out from deals, and that's really not good. But for some other investors, they actually have a very good time, because especially for VCs who are very bullish on, who have made very big bets on online education, on this kind of video conferencing kind of software, stuff like that. Those VCs are still very bullish in the market, and they're still making big bets right now. So and I'm primarily talking about the VCs in China, and VCs in Hong Kong, and VCs in Singapore. I mean, those are three regions where we have closer connections, and that's what I see. I can't say there's actually a clear definition about geographically what you feel like, but it's more about the nature of the investor we're talking to.
Yeah, I think something to add there. I think I think a very obvious trend, actually not. I think COVID accelerated that as well. It's that LPs are putting actually capital with more established brand names and established platforms. So tends to be that if investor already has had like a long track record, it's just a lot easier for them to continue to get the LP investments.
So new funds, new managers
would find it very difficult. I think first time managers, first time funds. I think this would be across the board globally. I think those guys would find it pretty difficult. I think in this time.
We've got a couple.
I'll quickly,
yeah.
So I'll quickly jump in. Like, it's more of a comment because I need to have a voice on this. I think if you see, we have bootstrapped this company since the last 5 years. We haven't really raised any external capital because we had to make sure, okay, there is value for money both for the customer as well as for the investors. And I think what VCs really need to look at is fund the right people. I think we have seen these scandals or like scams, like you were funding like the bad blood girl in the name of feminism, or deep tech company WeWork. So I think you really need to look at the right people, and there are obviously genuine people out there who need funding, but I think because of these things we get shadowed, and we, like, people of color, they receive like less than 1% of the venture capital. So we certainly need more light, or we need to be brought out. I think this is something a message that I want to give out.
Okay, so Roopam, you have the mic. I've got a question here relating to India's response to restrict investment from neighboring countries, which has been interpreted broadly to be about China. Now, obviously, one of the trends in Indian VC market has been the rise of Chinese investment, both the big tech companies, the Alibabas and Tencents, who have invested billions of dollars into India, but also the funds coming through Hong Kong or going direct. Now we have the new press note, which says that you've got to get permission if you are a Chinese investor to do anything in India, even a minority stake. Sitting in Hong Kong as an Indian, do you expect the two countries to do more together? The roots of this conversation is a program to develop links between entrepreneurs and investors in India and China. So we declare an interest in this subject. But here as an Indian, would you like to see, do you believe there will be more collaboration between entrepreneurs and investors in India and China?
I am an internationalist at heart. So I think I would certainly want that to happen. I think I would certainly want the world to be more global. And I think when you see the Indian startup space, like, they thrived when Chinese VC money came in. Like, there was this big boom that happened. I think if you need these policies, and I'm still not aware exactly how these policies are working, but I think I would certainly want the two countries to be working very closely. And I think it's certainly going to be a boom if the FDI policies are much more relaxed, and it favors more international capital coming in.
Right. Yeah. Duncan, have you invested in India at all, or are you focused on the immediate region?
We actually mainly focus in Greater China.
Greater China. Okay. And do you think your risk appetite for cross-border has decreased as a result of the virus? Would you tend to look at Hong Kong, Shenzhen, the Greater Bay Area, rather than something up in Shanghai or Beijing?
I think the same. Depends on the company, and we're still investing. Just that we're taking a negative view of the short-term economy doesn't mean we stop investing. We're still investing, but I think valuation-wise, it's actually now I would say normalized. It's actually getting back to a better, in terms of for investors' perspective, range compared to last year and the year before. So I guess maybe short term we will see another 6 months of what we call the credit crunch, and I guess a lot of money will jump back in. But I mean, the thing that people are investing into will be different. You know, a lot of the cash burning model would not be the favor. It would be going back into more deep tech related, AI, medical related, biotech. I think these are the things that actually will attract the next wave of money.
Okay, so you're saying, we had a conversation earlier on the type of investor who you might be willing to back, but you're also saying the sector may also vary as a result of the virus.
But we don't know whether it's 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. So I mean, companies that are surviving now, I think we will have to be cautious. That's our message to a lot of the companies that we meet.
Okay. I've got a question on Slido, again, from Anonymous. All these are anonymous apart from Mr. SC or Miss SC, whoever you are. Thank you for those. Any iconic products or companies that you see emerging due to COVID-19? So if we are going to get new unicorns who are explode as a result of, positively explode as a result of COVID, any observations or ideas? Obviously, Miles, your business, it would be one, I'm sure, but any thoughts from anyone? Any suggestions of sectors where we expect to see the next unicorn, or indeed individual companies? Okay,
So I think I will, because I'm the one, I work on AI only, so I can only comment about this AI field that I'm working on. But I'm actually very bullish about AI technology in general, because in the early days there was actually a hype. Everybody say we're doing AI, but they're not doing anything. But now there's actually the AI companies that are still surviving right now are mostly the AI companies that have real application, they're serving real demands in the market. And for me, in our case in particular, is before that, one of our hurdles is actually lots of data. Well, we need it because we're working on voice. We work on voice data. In the early days, before this pandemic, lots of our voice data are the number one problem we had to figure out is actually how do I record your voice without you feeling offended, or without having us spend a lot of money doing our hardware. But all of a sudden, right now, that's no longer an issue because everybody's doing everything online. And when that thing is online, the data is already there. It's just a matter of whether we can get it or not. So that's actually that thing happens for many other companies as well, especially in the AI space. The data barrier all of a sudden become lower because more data are becoming available. So that's actually where I see this. Actually, AI is still going to be a big thing, but for other industries, I cannot comment because I don't know that much.
Okay, very wise. Any thoughts?
There's a space that we have been paying quite a bit of attention to. From uncovering expert insights on, which is the application of biotech outside of pharma across industries, even like consumer products or industrial manufacturing, or food, right? What I mean by that is a biological way of creating materials, and or maybe even think about our clothes, right? The color dye actually is chemical, right, based processes. I think that whole shift towards biological processes, I think we'll see that accelerating in the coming years, because of the fact that the biotech basically is at a point where it's a lot more, the economics is starting to make sense,
and the speed is faster.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think why I think it's important to recognize this new space coming out is because it's got a lot of really positive benefits for us, all of us, from a sustainability standpoint. And I think here we're in a health pandemic, and I think a lot of what we're realizing is sustainability aspects of things, right? So I think this new kind of area will actually drive a lot of interest.
You used a word which is very dear to my heart, sustainability. Do you think that as a result of this, we will act more sustainably? And when I was a clean tech entrepreneur, my new business is ESG focused. Do you think that sustainability, climate consciousness, responsibility will increase? Or do you think in the recovery, nobody cares and will spend as much and use as much oil as possible to get the economy moving again?
literally had the same conversation yesterday with somebody, and I think I think the awareness definitely increased, but the thing is, I think we are prioritizing right now safety, right?
Safety.
So I mean, imagine just the amount of masks that we're using.
Safety is the S in
globally.
ESG, of course.
Right.
Well,
So
it's social, but it's part of it.
right. So again, it's like the whole short-term, long-term thing. But I
Yeah.
think the awareness has increased because of what's going on. I think people are appreciating the fact that, hey, we actually need to be thinking more for the long term.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I'm afraid our time is up. Alice is lurking. I'd like to thank the panel very much indeed. Thank you, and Miles sitting in China, and thank the audience in Hong Kong, China, India, the US, and everywhere else for joining us. Alice.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank our distinguished panelists for this wonderful discussion. Alan, Roopam, Peggy, Duncan, and Miles, thank you all for being here. And also to thank our colleagues in Northern California, Asia Society Northern California, Margaret Conley and Ken Wilcock, our chairman there. It's the genesis of this program was very much from Northern California. Roopam was recognized as Game Changer West honoree in April, along with Eric Yuan of Zoom. And so from that, we knew Roopam was stuck in Hong Kong. And we thought, well, we have a motto here at Asia Society started by our president. When life throws you lemon, make lemonade. So today's lemonade has come out very well. And I want to thank our wonderful panelists here in Hong Kong and also Miles in China. It's opportunities like this that, we have here at Asia Society Hong Kong have jumped on it. We started doing moving our program online in February, and there's going to be more of these programs online from in the coming months. And we look forward to also welcoming live audience back to this room at Jockey Club Hall at Asia Society. And so please join us. Stay tuned. It's not just here in Hong Kong, but the Asia Society global family has really jumped on the technology, trying to bring you information directly from some of these distinguished speakers and people who are in the know. That's how we started our COVID-19 update February 14th. And that was our first live webcast, live program online. So please join us. And I want to, again, thank all of you for being here and look forward to further discussion, further collaboration. And also I want to thank Wharton Alumni Association, University of Pennsylvania, and FinStep Asia for being part of this, partnering with us for this program, and look forward to further discussion. And again, stay healthy, stay safe, and we look forward to welcome you back either virtually or on live, in person. Thank you.
Thank you.